In a fiercely competitive market, the Vivo V19 is the company's answer to a true mid-range smartphone. The subtle design changes like that L-shaped primary camera or the dual punch-hole display make it stand out more than the usual. The V19 packs 187 grams of weight and an 8.5mm thickness, and it's a comfortable smartphone at the end of the day. But it not having things like an official Corning Gorilla Glass protection rating makes using the phone a bit apprehensive. Although the phone is glass, we don't know the phone's durability, and the plastic frame is not a big reassurance, with it prone to picking up scratches over time. It's nice to see that the phone does come with a pre-applied screen protector though, and the included silicone case with the phone is something I found myself using on a more often basis just to protect it from normal wear and tear. The other solid features about the phone include the dual nano SIM plus microSD hybrid tray, the Type-C USB port for charging, and the 3.5mm headphone jack. Of course, the power and volume buttons are found as usual, and so are the microphones on the top and bottom edge alongside that mono speaker, and more on that in just a bit. There's no external biometric means of authentication, but you do get a fairly reliable in-screen fingerprint scanner, although its optical nature means it doesn't do too well with damp fingers. You also get face unlock, and these options in combination offer a good enough experience. Speaking of the display biometrics though, it's worth noting that this thing has a Super AMOLED 6.44-inch Full HD Plus panel. The 20:9 aspect ratio sits well with other things like HDR10 support and the 1200 nit peak brightness, which comes in very handy for a number of usage scenarios, especially outdoors. Testing the display even more, there's no issue with quality control, and perhaps the flat nature of it makes it not as immersive when watching multimedia content as other competitors. Another drawback, especially for me, is the lack of a 90Hz refresh rate. We've seen more smartphones bring it to the table at this price range in recent months, and its omission isn't a big deal for people who have never experienced the higher refresh rate, but for someone who tests out a lot of devices, the lack of it is definitely noticeable. At least the AMOLED panel makes up for that with vibrant colors and a pretty good multimedia experience. It falls short though when it comes to the mono speaker, and to really enjoy content, you're better off using a wired or wireless pair of earphones. But while display is a big selling point for the Vivo V19, its user experience pushes it away from being a firm recommendation. Before we get to that though, let's address the internals of the phone. We're looking at Qualcomm Snapdragon 712 octa-core processor clocked at 2.3 GHz and the Adreno 616 GPU. Bear in mind this combination of power is more than a year old, however with 8GB of RAM, it still scores decent on benchmarks. The phone isn't a gaming powerhouse by any means, but up to 256GB of UFS 2.1 storage plus microSD card expansion makes it a decent shout. The bulk of the hiccups actually come with the software optimization. We've got Android 10, but on top is Vivo's FunTouch OS 10. This is a heavily customized skin, and while I do not have too many problems with OEM skins, this is just not it. Whether it's the notification panel, the convoluted menu options for the smartphone's camera, or the bloatware that comes pre-installed on the phone, it just feels like a bit too much. This impacts day-to-day performance and really takes away from what the core smartphone experience should be able to deliver. Don't get me wrong, you can have your PUBG sessions at HD on a high frame rate setting, and with 8GB of RAM management on the overall for high-end applications is good, but stutter on a daily basis just gets a bit annoying. We've seen much cleaner software experiences from the competition, and most of the stuff Vivo's thrown in is pushing for too much. For instance, the split screen option is great, but the experience cannot be handled by the phone smoothly. Other things like the dark mode or the screen recording option are nice, but perhaps Vivo should have focused on the essentials more than cramming in everything on this one phone, which obviously makes software updates for this phone a big problem too. Giving users NFC would have been a much better choice for the smartphone and making the software leaner. Now, this isn't unprecedented by any means, and we've seen companies like Oppo and Huawei evolve through this phase over the years, and we think Vivo should and can replicate exactly that with future iterations and more emphasis on this core experience as we see newer smartphones from the company in the next few years. But as we are getting to the end stage of the review, it's only fair to talk about the camera experience. The camera on the smartphone is a strong point, but the quad setup isn't a necessity. We've got a primary Sony 48 megapixel wide sensor on there with an 8 megapixel ultra wide one, a 2 megapixel depth depth one, and a 2 megapixel macro unit. With the primary, you can take good photos, especially when the lighting situation is ideal, and you can even get away with zooming in. But the 8 megapixel ultra-wide lens shows a big quality drop. Images are much softer, and the colors between the primary and the ultra-wide are wayward, especially in lower lighting situations, and it's just a bit of a struggle to get your best photo with the ultra-wide sensor. So as long as you're on the primary sensor, you're good. The macro lens at 2 megapixels isn't going to be particularly useful aside from having that versatility, but the depth sensor actually did help with some pretty nice portrait images, although software processing does make them look a bit over the top. The smartphone's night mode is also a treat and works best when you combine it with a bit of ambient light around. Images do look sharper, but all of that goes away if you plan to use the ultra-wide sensor at night. You can record up to 4K 30fps footage with the V19 if required, but it isn't anything outstanding, and there is a dedicated super anti-shake feature, but it only works with 720p footage, and that's something you should keep in mind. Over on the front, you get a 32 megapixel primary wide sensor alongside an 8 megapixel ultra wide one. Results aren't too shabby here, but with portrait mode, there is a bit of an issue with background retention. The ultra wide angle camera, on the other hand, becomes more of a versatility tool here, producing average images and nothing more than that. Something that is way above average though is battery, and this thing can easily get you a day or even more than that of heavy usage, clocking anywhere between 9 to 10 hours of screen on time. More so, the 33-watt charging via the Type-C USB port called Vivo Flash Charge 2.0 helps a lot, giving you over 50% of juice in just 30 minutes of charging. So the Vivo V19 in a nutshell is a smartphone that's riding on good display, versatile camera, and above average battery technology. But its key omission comes in software and optimization. And given we use our smartphones essentially for that reliable experience, it isn't something that everyone will be fond of, especially at 1,499 dirhams. Some people who vouch for Vivo may pick this phone up over the other competition, but for anyone who wants a mid-range smartphone, there are better options out there. But there's definitely work to do here for Vivo too, and if it wants to stay relevant in this fierce mid-range segment, it needs to deliver on this core usage experience, and I'm sure it'll be able to in the next couple of years to come. So that's about it for this one. Thanks for watching, and do subscribe for more videos in the future. This was Vaibhav, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.